Welcome back to the channel where we mix things up, and today I'm going to be doing my tier list for every starting small forward in the 2020 to 21 tier list maker. And so we've already done the point guards and shooting guards. You can watch this video, then watch that video, and the power forwards and centers should come out soon. So if you're in our tier list, we have MVP caliber, basically the best of the best, all-star, borderline all-star, good but not great, average, and time to draft a new one. Most of them are self-explanatory. Time to draft a new one is that they're so and time to get a new one, basically. That one's pretty self-explanatory too. But yeah, so subscribe, like, and let's get right into it. So we first start off with Michael Porter Jr. Michael has been on a tear recently, and ever since the Jamal Murray injury, I think he's averaging like 26 points a game on like 50, 40, 90, which is incredible as in his second season. But still, he hasn't been doing it for his whole season. It's definitely good but not great, or borderline all-star. I think I'm gonna put him to the side for now. I'm gonna see where I rank other players and then match Michael with that guy. So the first real person is Tim Hardaway, and I'm going to put him in the good but not great. He's been off the bench this season for the Mavericks, and I think that's a really good role. He's adapted really well, even though he's been a starter for his whole career, going off the bench when Luka exits the game. He's definitely thrived in this role. He just scored 36 points and 10 threes last night, which is a Mavericks franchise record, which is incredible with a team that had Luka, Dirk, and Tim Hardaway. He might not be on the team. He is an expiring deal. I think he should, because with his shot creation and just catch and shooting from Luka's incredible passes, I think he's a good fit. Now, if they want to sign a big free agent, they're probably going to have to re-announce his rights, but I think that he should be a long-term piece for this team. Next, Derrick Jones Jr. Now, I personally don't know what's going on with Derrick Jones Jr. There's been a couple people who's been talking about the Blazers and like how bad their defense is. They're talking about like everyone expected them to be a lot better with Derrick Jones Jr., DJJ, Derrick Jones Jr. Yeah, DJJ had to make sure his initials were that. Robert Covington, Yusuf Nurkic coming back, but recently I don't think he's been playing. I don't know if he's hurt or he's just out of the rotation, which would be kind of weird because he's one of their best defenders, can shoot a little bit, and is still very athletic. I'm going to put him in the good but not great because his defense, and he's still a really good player, and we know what he can be. Now, I like I said, I don't know what's going on with him recently, but definitely good but not great. But more on the lower tier of that. Next, Jimmy Butler. So it's, of course, MVP caliber. MVP caliber or all-star. Now, he, of course, did not make the all-star team, but it's kind of, I feel like just his value as a leader, culture difference, just being able to take over in the fourth quarter. This Heat team just made the NBA Finals and pushed the Lakers to 6 games. I think he is in the MVP caliber tier, because if you remember, when the Heat did not have Jimmy Butler, they were so bad. But when he came back, they went up to the 4 seed, and now they're the 6 seed. And I think that Jimmy's just leadership and just overall winning puts him in the MVP caliber. Now, we'll be talking about some superstars later, and he's definitely worse than those guys, but I think he deserves to be in the MVP caliber. Next, Chris Middleton will be in the All-Star tier. I know he did not make the All-Star game this year, but I think it's just because how good the league is with Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving now being all-stars this year. There's less room for people like Chris Middleton and those guys, like Domantas Sabonis. I know Sabonis made it later on, but he made it initially. But Chris Middleton, 50, 40, 90 guy, efficient 22-point per game scorer, is really good on defense when he tries. Remember, when he tries, and in the playoffs, he should. Now, I don't know if he can be that second option alongside Giannis, but I think Drew Holiday was a really big pickup. He's been so good. Oh, Drew Holiday has. And Chris Middleton's been consistent all year. Definitely an all-star. He's made the all-star team the last 2 years, but like I said, the talent of this league is just so crazy, and he definitely is an all-star caliber player. Next, Rui Hachimura. Okay, it's either the good but not great or average. I think I'm going to put him in the average, mainly because he's facing some injury issues. He's been playing really well, mainly from a Russell Westbrook assist, just getting a dunk, a mid-range jump shot, sometimes even a 3-point shot. He has faced a couple injury issues, which is kind of a problem. But when he's playing on the court, he's a decent defender. He is strong around the paint. He has a little bit of jump shot, and he's a pretty good fit with Russ. I would say he's average, but remember, it's only his second season, and in the next couple of years, he can definitely take the next step to a good but not great or borderline all-star. Next, the Paul Patrick Williams. Now, I know a lot of Bulls fans and just a lot of fans in general are really high on Patrick. I mean, nobody expected him to go fourth overall, but with his defense, he's an efficient three-point shooter, has a mid-range jump shot. I think he's good, but okay, he shows the glimpses, but I don't know if he's better than Rui. Now, I'm going to put him in the time to draft a new one. Now, I'm not saying, Bulls, draft a new small forward. Don't do that. I'm just saying that he's definitely worse than average, but that's just because he is a rookie. And there will be another rookie here, which we will talk about later. But I think that Patrick Williams is going to be an absolute beast, especially on both ends. When Lauri Markkanen probably leaves in free agency, he's definitely going to take that starting power forward role, which he is better at than small forward. I think that he's going to be a really good player. But right now, he has to be in the bottom tier because he's shown glimpses, but he hasn't shown the consistency yet. And I'm not, like I said, I'm going to say it again. It's not time to draft a new one, but he just has to be in the bottom tier. Next, OG Anunoby. Now, OG has taken the next step. He's averaging 15 points a game, still locking up the best defender. Hasn't played the last couple of games against the Clippers, Lakers. But I'm going to say he's good but not great. I wouldn't say he's borderline all-star level. I know Raptors fans would probably put him here, but I personally don't think that yet. Now, I do think he's at the top of that. I would have him over Tim Hardaway, Derrick Jones Jr., and some other guys we'll talk about in the good but not great tier. But as a defender, is a really good defender. He, of course, hit that game winner in the playoffs. He's a capable three-point shooter, is a pretty good finisher around the rim, and I think OG has some pretty high potential. I'm not sure about superstar, but definitely an all-star caliber, or at least a 3-and-D all-star role player. So like one of the best role players in the league. Next, Darius Bazley. I'm going to say average. I mean, he's not in the good but not great tier. I would have him in the same tier as Rui. Rui probably better. There are some really high expectations because he was really good in the bubble. 15 points a game on like 40+% from three, and with the Thunder trading everyone, Chris Paul, Steven Adams, losing Gallinari in free agency, nobody, and traded Schroeder, they had to play the young guys, and Darius Bazley, Poku, Shea, Lou Dort, that's their young guys. Now, he's still averaging like 14 points a game, though his efficiency from three isn't what we kind of expected. I think he's only shooting like 31%, but he's shown the talent as a defender, shooter, attacker around the rim. Definitely going to be a good potentially six-man or starting power forward for this Thunder team. I'm going to say he's average for now, but he definitely has some really good talent. Next, Kelly Oubre. Now, I'm going to put him in the good but not great tier. At the start of the season, he was so bad. Oh, I actually think I put Oubre on the shooting guard tier list. I think so, but okay, we're just going to ignore that. I'm not going to pretend this is Andrew Wiggins because it probably should, but I'm just going to pretend it's Kelly Oubre. Oubre, like I said, started off so bad, but he's been a lot better recently. He had, I think, a season-ending injury or gonna miss most of the rest of this regular season with like I think a hand injury or something, but I think he didn't fit in this Warrior system at first, mainly because he was shooting step back 3-pointers, step back mid-ranges, which that's not Kelly Oubre. He's more of a catch and shoot kind of guy, and with him being more of that, Draymond, Curry finding him, he's been a lot better. Now, he has been off the bench, which I do like with, I think, Quan, Escano, Anderson starting, but still a decent defender. I don't think he's a long-term piece for this Warriors team, but still a good but not great tier. Next, DeMar DeRozan. I'm going to put him in the All-Star tier. I think DeMar is one of the most underrated players in the league. His playmaking has been so good this season. I think he's averaging like 7 assists, has multiple like 13 plus assist games, still gonna give you an efficient 22 points a game. And yes, I don't know if the Spurs are going to re-sign him, but I think if they do, that's fine. I do think he wants to expand his brand because the Spurs are always going to be an underrated team because they're kind of a small market, not the smallest, but they are a small market. DeMar, definitely good player. Interesting to see how his free agency will be. Next, TJ Warren. So at the start of the season, I probably would have put borderline all-star, but with him being hurt and not playing well, I'm gonna put him in the good but not great. I would have like him and OG at the same level. He was so good at the bubble, and before the bubble, he was an efficient 20-point per game scorer and one of the most underrated players in the league. He's got more recognition now because people call him the next MJ, which that's a lot of recognition, of course. But TJ, definitely a really solid player. Hopefully, he can stay healthy. And that was fit with Karis LeVert on this Pacers team is kind of questionable with this, but with the starting five of Malcolm Brogdon, Karis LeVert, TJ Warren, Sabonis, and Miles Turner, that's really solid. Now they do have to kind of fix their coaching. I think they should give Coach Nate a chance, but that's another video. But definitely good but not great tier at the top of it. Next, Anthony Edwards. I think I might. Okay. It's either average or good, but not great. I think he's been actually really good in April, and they're the Wolves, so nobody talks about it. But he's been averaging like 19 points a game for the season now, 22 points a game in April, and I'm gonna put him in the good but not great tier. I was thinking about putting him in the average tier, but I think that with him potentially having a real case for the Rookie of the Year, he deserves to be in the good but not great tier. I would probably have him over Derek Jones Jr., maybe Kelly Oubre over him. But I think he's definitely deserved a good but not great tier. This Wolves team, he's been basically the only consistent player on the team. Well, he didn't start off really well, but with Cat being hurt, D'Lo hurt, Malik Beasley suspended, and getting hurt basically, Anthony Edwards has shown a lot and living up to that first overall pick hype. Next, Jeremy Grant. I'm gonna put him in the borderline All-Star. He had at the All-Star game, he had a good shot at it. He was averaging like 26 points a game at the start of the season, but cooled off to about like 22 points a game. Now you don't want Jeremy Grant as your first option, but as a second or third option, being efficient, 18-point per game scorer, locking up their best player. I think that's a really good player. I mean, I don't know if the Pistons, if he's going to be a long-term piece for the Pistons, or they trade him for some good value, but definitely a borderline All-Star player. His development has been crazy from the Sixers to Thunder to the Nuggets, and every year he gets better to now being a borderline All-Star, and that's really impressive. Next, Kevin Knox. Now, I don't think Kevin Knox is their starter, but we're just going to put him as him, and definitely time to draft a new one. Like I said, I think it's like Reggie Bullock starting, and sometimes RJ Barrett starts at the 3, but if it's Kevin Knox, he is a bench warmer now, but they have to draft a new one for Kevin Knox. I mean, he hasn't showed much talent, especially with Tibbs not trusting him because his defense is so bad. I think that he needs a new shot. I mean, like I said, he's been a bench warmer recently, but he's still a good player. But the Knicks, not a long-term piece. Time to draft a new one for Kevin Knox. Next, Terrence Ross. I'm going to put him in that average tier, good but not great. Okay. Okay. I don't really watch the Magic after they traded Vooch and Aaron Gordon and Fournier, but Terrence Ross, he is still a decent scorer. I'm going to put him in the average tier. I would have all of these, like Derek Jones Jr. over him because of his defense, and I think he's in the average tier. I mean, he's probably going to be traded to a contender this year, but still an average player. Next, Brandon Ingram. Now, like Chris Middleton and DeMar, he did not make the All-Star team, but I think he deserves to be in the All-Star caliber tier. He's been the second option of Zion this year. And yes, I would like their pairing with Zion and B.I. being better defensively, but on offense, they're an absolute beast. He's still averaging like 24 points a game on really good efficiency, and he's still a really good player. The Pelicans definitely got a stud in BI, and definitely, I think he can be a franchise second option, though you do need defenders and shooters alongside both of them, but the Pelicans are definitely building up something good. Next, LeBron James, MVP caliber, the best player in the world for me. Hopefully he can return back healthy. That's pretty simple. Bojan Bogdanovic, good but not great. He's been one of the most, I know a lot of people are underrated, but he's been really underrated, keeping the Jazz afloat offensively. He scored like 33 a couple days ago on some pretty good threes, or a lot of threes. And I remember still, he's just a really solid 3-and-D defender, can go around the rim. I still remember when he kind of slowed down LeBron in the 2018 playoffs, which is definitely impressive for slowing down a prime LeBron James, but he's still a good player. I mean, he's definitely going to be an X factor for this Jazz team because they didn't have him last year, and he's definitely a big part of this team. Next, Jaylen Brown is also in the All-Star tier. I would have him over B.I., Chris Middleton, and probably DeMar. He has been slowing down, and he did get an injury. Hopefully, he gets back soon. It apparently it isn't as bad as it looked. It looked really bad, but it's apparently a day-to-day ankle injury, which is definitely you love to see because he's an all-star caliber player, and at the start of the season played like an all-NBA guy. But he's kind of cooled down recently, and you never want to see a 24-year-old get injured. Next, Eric Gordon. I mean, it's either average or good but not great. I'm going to put him in the good but not great because he's still a really good scorer, a pretty good six-man. He's on a pretty bad contract, but I think it might be tradable. I mean, the Eric Gordon experiment is you might get 25 points a game from him. He even dropped 60 once. Or you might get 3 points on 10% from the field. That's basically the Eric Gordon experiment. Next, Kawhi Leonard, MVP caliber. I would say, I mean, there's no Kevin Durant here, so he is the second best small forward in the league. If Kevin Durant's a small forward, I would put him over Kawhi, but the claw he returned recently didn't play too well, but he's gonna always have that defense, gonna have that mid-range jump shot. Now, his clutchness has been kind of questionable. I mean, he of course hit that game winner in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and only the clutchest player can do that. But he kind of choked against the Nuggets. He hasn't really been hitting too many game winners this season. Now, I know it's so hard to be clutch because everything is focusing on you, but Kawhi is still an amazing player. Next, Isaac Okoro. He's a good player. Definitely good rookie, but I'm going to have to say time to draft a new one. Similar to Patrick Williams, showing a lot of promise, dropped 32 points recently. But I'm not saying the Cavs draft a new small forward, but Okoro definitely has to be in the bottom tier because he's still a rookie. I think he can be a really good role player as a defender, a slasher, and elite defender. And that's a pretty good pickup, especially if the Cavs get a Jonathan Kuminga, Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, or Cade Cunningham. Next, Harrison Barnes. I think, like Boyan, like a lot of players I've said, he's one of the most underrated players in the league, and I'm going to put him in the good but not great tier. Now, in the Warriors and the Kings, he had some really high potential and showed a lot of promise. Now, I don't think a lot of people know that Harrison Barnes is 27 years old. I'm 100%, I'm 50% sure. Okay, I'm sure that 50% of you don't know Harrison Barnes is 27 years old. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but he hasn't been that all-star what we saw from Golden State and Dallas, but still an efficient 20-point-per-game scorer, can basically do a little bit of everything. Next, Danny Green, average, just an average 3-and-D player, but still a big part of the Sixers team because the Sixers have the second-best defense in the league, and his spacing is very important alongside Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Next, Joe Harris, good but not great. I wouldn't say he's borderline all-star level, but Joe Harris, I think, leading the league in three-point percentage, averaging like 16 points a game on like 4 threes a night. I mean, I think that Joe Harris's all-around game is really underrated as a playmaker, a decent defender, can attack the rim, and that really opens up the game when still he gets so many open shots from Kyrie, KD, and James Harden. Next, Gordon Hayward. I'm going to say borderline all-star. He played like a borderline all-star at the start of the season. He's kind of cooled down and has been hurt for like the last month, which it's kind of sad to see for all of the injuries Gordon Hayward has been through. But he's found a home in Charlotte. I think that a lot of people found the contract questionable, but if you're a small market team, you have to overpay for guys like this, and definitely the right move. I think, like I said, hopefully he can stay healthy and going to be a big part of a potential Hornets playoff run for now and the future. Next, Mikal Bridges, good but not great. I would have him in the same tier as OG Anunoby, one of the best corner three-point shooters in the league. Just a really efficient, I think he's shooting like 38% from 3, 40% from 3, while locking up their best player. He has definitely he's definitely more than a 3-and-D role player, but that's what he excels in. Stays in the corner, cuts in when he needs to. Chris Paul's always going to find him, and he's definitely a really good player. I would have him in the same level as OG Anunoby. Next, Kyle Anderson. Slow-mo. I mean, strictly off that nickname, you should know he's one of the slowest players in the league. But he's good, and I'm going to put him in the good but not great. I mean, he's still averaging like a efficient 13 points a game. Yes, he's slow, but in a really fast, just when players are so fast with like Russell Westbrook, John Morant going 200 miles per hour, people like Kyle Anderson really surprise some players. Like if he's on a fast break and he's going really slow, the defender is gonna go like, oh, chase down LeBron James. But if he's going that slow, he's just gonna just block nothing, and then he's just gonna do a layup. And Kyle Anderson's definitely took that to his advantage, and I think he's pretty underrated, good but not great tier. Next, DeAndre Hunter, I would have him in the same tier as Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. Now, he's shown a lot more offense than both of them because he averaged like 18 points a game before he got injured on really good efficiency, but he's been out for a while. His defense is still really good and a really big part of this Hawks team when you have Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Gallinari, all below average defenders, and he's definitely going to be a big part of this team. Hopefully he can return soon in the playoffs. And then finally, Michael Porter Jr. So looking at these guys, I would have him over basically all of these guys. I'm going to put him in the borderline all-star. Like I said, he's a perfect fit with Jokic, averaging like 25 points a game, 50, 40, 90, ever since Jamal Murray went down. And he's just such a good player. If he can stay healthy, he's a future superstar, a future star at the least. But just with his being a 6'10 Kevin Durant, and yes, his defense is pretty suspect, but his offense is just so good. And just with him having the physical tools of it, that's definitely a big part of his defense improving. So I think this is going to be my tier list. So reviewing it, I have MVP caliber, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler, All-Star, Jaylen Brown, DeMar DeRozan, Chris Middleton, Brandon Ingram, borderline All-Star, Jeremy Grant, Gordon Hayward, MPJ, good but not great, OG, DeAndre Hunter, Mikal Bridges, TJ Warren, Joe Harris, Tim Hardaway, Bojan Bogdanovic, Harrison Barnes, Kelly Oubre, Anthony Edwards, Derrick Jones Jr., Eric Gordon, Kyle Anderson. Now I do have to admit that Jones, Gordon, Kyle Anderson, and even Anthony Edwards are not as good as OG or DeAndre Hunter, but they're not bad enough to be in the average tier. And then for the average tier, Rui, Hachimura, Darius Beasley, both of them are young, only in their second season, definitely will go up in the future. Terrence Ross, Danny Green, both vets who can score a little bit. And then time to draft a new one, Kevin Knox, they have to get a new one. And then Patrick Williams and Isaac Okoro, they're both in their rookie season, and I can't put them in the average tier yet, but they will be high, most likely there or higher in the future. So that being said, that's going to be my starting small forward tier list maker. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and see you all next time.